Hello, listeners, and welcome back to CES. We are live here in Las Vegas, and this is the Peggy Smedley Show. And we've had a great morning so far, interviewing some amazing guests, and it's continuing right now. And I'm talking with Jeff from IDC. Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, Peggy, and hi, everybody. I'm an industry analyst with IDC. For those of you who don't know who IDC is, that stands for International Data Corp. The company was founded 50 plus years ago, basically sizing technology markets, growth rates, et cetera. And we've grown into a full-scale industry analyst firm covering many different industries, many different technologies. So I focus a lot of my time on in the innovation space in general, product innovation across industry, in particular on automotive and connected products. So that's why the past 4 years I've come to CES because of my interest in those two areas.
And so being here, you have to be like a kid in a candy store talking about automotive, because we are in automotive heaven here. Yeah. Sometimes I tell people I'm not sure if this is CES or an automotive show.
Yes.
Because it's kind of crazy, and I don't know that it was like this 4 years ago, and now it is truly an amazing car show in some ways when you talk about connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, and what you think about it. But talk a little bit about what you see, just overall, your perceptions of the car space today and what you kind of think about it.
Sure. And it's funny you said kid in the candy store. I think my article I wrote after I went to CES last year used those very words, right? If you love cars, CES is like it's got to be like a candy store for you, right? I love cars. I love automotive. So to see the new concept cars, right? It's in a lot of ways become a mini, not so mini auto show, but also of course the newer technologies, the connected technologies, artificial intelligence, obviously, and machine learning. How do we take advantage of all the data coming from these connected vehicles to be smarter about how we develop the next iteration of those products, to deliver services to drivers that they want and need, so that car companies can actually make money off them. So there's a lot of interesting things going on in the industry. It's highly complex on a lot of levels right now for automotive companies. It's complex from a product standpoint. I heard the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, talk about autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, connected vehicles as the most complex engineering problem ever, right? So from a product standpoint, designing, developing, and optimizing these products over time is a systems challenge, right? You need to have multiple engineers come together, mechanical, electrical, now software, right? High-end luxury SUV vehicles have up to 100 million lines of software code within them, right? That really is living over time, needs to be constantly updated. And now, as we move to level 4 and 5 autonomy at some point, people are saying 2021, maybe from a commercial vehicle standpoint, we'll see that, and eventually, passenger cars. How do we begin to take advantage of the flow of data from those vehicles to not only make sure that the experience of customers in those vehicles is good, but that car companies can actually begin to make money off that connectivity, right? And it could be from an infotainment standpoint, what content is sent to your infotainment system, and it could be from a software standpoint as well. Maybe there are software upgrade offers that could be presented based on what cities you're driving in, based on if you're driving in a mountainous terrain or desert terrain or what have you. There are potential opportunities there from a software standpoint. And of course, all of that software, the brains within a vehicle needs to be constantly tested and regression tested against that model to ensure functional safety, right? So I hear a lot about functional safety here as well, right? And how do we ensure that the experience of driving a car or riding in an autonomous vehicle is uninterrupted, right, for you and I, while at the same time, in the background, somewhere in the cloud, or maybe I've heard talk of microclouds within the vehicle, right? There's testing and verification and validation that the software that's being updated within that car actually is going to work, and it's not going to cause the vehicle to do wacky things that create unsafe environments.
Well, let's think about that, because the car industry has changed. Are they a mobility company, or are they an automaker? You know, and now we have tech companies who want to be car companies.
Right.
So, and now they're partnering.
Yeah.
We've heard Ford now is becoming a mobility company, right? And
Right.
you just talked about NVIDIA and what their role is in all of this. So we're seeing this whole new collaboration of companies that we've never seen before. So when we look at all of this, what does that make the car industry today? And I made a comment earlier, if Henry Ford only could see today
Yeah.
what the industry has become since he first started mass production and the first Model T coming off. We've totally transformed the car industry, and it's not the same thing. And you just talked about 100 million lines of code is nothing like what that Model T was like.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we at IDC, we talk about different industries in terms of value chains. So we have engineering-oriented value chains, which are automotive companies, heavy equipment companies, industrial machinery, technology-oriented, which are high-tech companies, and let's even bring brand-oriented companies, so retail companies. So in a way, you have those three value chains converging into the automotive space in a way, right? It's not just high-tech companies, it's do I need to think of myself as an auto company as more of kind of a retailer eventually when we move to level 4 and 5 autonomy, right? I need to, basically I'm going to have an opportunity, a captive audience, right? As we sit back in our autonomous vehicles and they drive us to wherever we need to get to actually, provide offers to them, serve offers to them, make money, maybe have a set of retail partners I'm working with, depending on what brand vehicle it is. And from a technology standpoint, auto companies, realize that that it's such a technical challenge. There's no way that any one company can do it alone. High-tech companies can't do it alone. They don't know how to design and develop cars per se. Auto companies need the technology expertise. So you're seeing tier 1 suppliers, classically tier 1 suppliers in the auto space become, we call them tier 0 suppliers, where they're actually on par with the design and development team, right? And they're actually functioning as really an extension of that team versus just supplying a part or a system. And so that means that auto companies really need to rethink the systems and applications they're using to actually design, develop, and optimize these products over time. So companies in the auto space have moved to unify product data and information centrally, move that information to the cloud where it makes sense for processes like design review and supplier collaboration for easier access, and work with those extended suppliers and value chain that really need to be in place. So that's, talk about complexity, that's another level of complexity, right?
So does it go to then this whole idea of data that we collect? So we have to have the right data to offer the right services to that customer that's sitting in the car, because you can't just offer anything. You have to customize those offerings, because if I'm sitting in my autonomous vehicle, don't just offer me anything. It's got to be custom to who I am. So every car maker or tech company who has an autonomous vehicle, whoever's going to make it, whether it's going to be Tesla, whether it's going to be Google, whether it's going to be Ford, whoever, those offerings had better be tailored to who I am, because they better know who I am sitting in that car.
Right.
And that's how specific that AI, those machine learning elements that we're talking about are going to have to be. And I think that's what we're talking about, and that's the complexity that we're getting to know and to be able to talk, because I'm going to be able to order my gasoline. I'm going to be able to order and say, hey, I want that Starbucks, and it's going to take me right to Starbucks, and it's going to be ordered. I'm going to pay for my car, and those services and offerings, and they're going to be able to say, oh, you also want to order while you're in the car, you're ordering that dress, you're ordering those clothings for your son, whatever is going to happen. Those transactions are all going to happen from your vehicle.
Yeah, and here's what your, ideally, what are your past driving habits, browsing habits within the vehicle, or even elsewhere outside the vehicle, right? And this is where you talked about the brand-oriented value chain, right? Automotive companies beginning to think a little bit like retailers. In fact, some of them actually have retail teams that they've developed, and starting to think about how can we start to build profiles of of types of drivers, so that we understand what types of content they need from a software standpoint or from a retail standpoint. It's really how CPG companies and apparel companies, other retailers have thought for years, right? And so this paradigm is making its way into automotive. And so, I mean, these are just a couple of examples why there's such digital transformation going on in the auto space. I think it's kind of ground zero for digital transformation in industries, as many people are talking about these days.
When we talk about when this is all going to happen, this transformation that we talk about, the complexity is also so great. There's also a lot of missteps that are going to happen along the way.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of frustrated consumers because we all expect everything to happen yesterday as
Yes.
consumers. But it's not going to happen overnight. And there's a lot of things, as I've talked to many companies, that have to happen from point A to point B to point C to point D, between the car companies, the carriers, the ISPs, that have to happen with, our 5G and the communication that goes into the car, the mobility aspect that has to happen, because we all know already our phones aren't connected all the time, and
Right.
you can't have a car not be connected 24/7, right?
Right.
So we have to have our infrastructure properly working. When we talk about this happening, we don't really know that 2030 is going to happen, 2040 is going to happen. 10, 20, 30 years from now, we still have a lot more work that has to be done before all this comes to fruition.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And there's just basic inertia that has to be overcome, a societal inertia, right? And resistance to change so massive like this, right? I mean, I cover the automotive industry. I spend a lot of time around it. I love to drive, right? And I think my 10-year-old son who has a passion for cars apparently is really looking forward to driving in 6 years, right? So I think there's that hurdle of just that people still enjoy driving. They don't want to give up control of that, but at the same time, wouldn't it be nice if you're on a long 4-hour trip to the mountains with family or longer for a ski trip, and it's late and you could turn on the autopilot and go to sleep for a little while, or play a game with the kids to keep them entertained, right? So I think in a way, having the option, I mean, that's how I would love to see things work out, is just having that option, of that level 5 option of moving to autonomous when I want to. And then from a public transit standpoint, from commercial vehicle standpoint, I think that's another maybe shorter term opportunity that will probably happen sooner than later. Just the economics of it just I think make sense, right? You have little buses like Ollie. I don't know if you saw the Ollie display
Absolutely.
out there and went through that. The hashtag is, I'll give them a little shout out, accessible Ollie. Hashtag accessible Ollie, and basically their focus is to provide a bus in the connected city that people with handicap could go and access and be identified, whether depending on no matter what their handicap is, and be able to travel to where they need to get to, right? So the feeling of independence that it could give to people who can't drive for whatever reason. My parents are old right now. They're not driving. They're not driving anymore, and it was hard to give up their license. And I understand that. I'm sure I'll be there at some point as well. But to be able to have that independence of public transit that I could access when I need to, is I think a great opportunity from an autonomous vehicle standpoint. So
Let's talk about, you mentioned NVIDIA and early on. Is a company like that going to be the one that wins out? Because we're in a struggle for who's going to have the fastest speeds and feeds and be able to offer those kind of connectivity that we're going to need when we talk about chips and power and things like that. There's a lot of power struggle going on for that space right now, right? And we're talking about whether it's going to be them or an Intel or who's going to be able to power what we need. Are we going to see a lot of changing of the guard in this space when we talk about automotive?
I think that the co-opetition model that's in place right now will continue. I think each party, whether you're automotive or you're high tech expert company, you have your own area of expertise. I don't think NVIDIA wants to build a car someday, but will they? Is there a great opportunity for them? Absolutely, to provide the AI platform within vehicles to enable the, as I talked about earlier, the constant simulation and testing and regression testing of software and the different scenarios that autonomous vehicles will face over time. Autonomous vehicles are going to be constantly learning, right? So what's that system within the vehicle that enables and ensures, as I said, functional safety, right? And NVIDIA and Qualcomm, Intel, those are all companies that provide the processing power and the platforms necessary to enable that. So I think I see the competition model really continuing. I don't see that necessarily changing. And that said, NVIDIA, I'm not sure what they started, but they have 321 partners right now across the automotive space, across high tech. They really feed into the whole connected vehicle paradigm and approach that they're taking. So, and that's only going to increase. Amazon with their Alexa product as well, right? And you see, Samsung coming out with Bixby. Microsoft has their Cortana voice platform. Those are other tech players that have a play within automotive, right? That are providing, either software development kits for auto manufacturers to embed that capability within vehicles, or collaborating with them, their engineering teams collaborating together to make that happen. So I think those are, I think that trend will continue. And again, will Amazon build a car someday? Who knows?
I was
Anything's
gonna say,
possible
we're
with them,
getting
right?
like with artificial intelligence, it just depends what path they take, right?
Yes.
Because now we're talking about voice, we're talking about what AI path they go, because there's many paths that we can talk about that a company can take with an AI platform, right? And processing power, right? Or is that what we're talking about? Because when we look at this, Samsung talked about Bixby now. Just what you said, Microsoft with Cortana. I mean, with any direction we want to go, IBM with Watson, we're talking about in AI, anybody can talk about where they want to go in this world of artificial intelligence and how we incorporate it into any part of, whether it's our car, whether it's in our home, whether it's in our healthcare. AI has an opportunity to really take an influence in our lives in a lot of different ways.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, I sat in on an IBM session yesterday, and a woman from IBM Research was talking about kind of the future opportunities that she sees. And one was quantum computing, which I'm not going to begin to pretend I know about quantum computing. But the idea is basically provide additional processing power. And the other was around, okay, so what's next for AI? So AI is very good at churning through a lot of data, applying machine learning algorithms to that information, and augmenting whatever process you're talking about, whether it's service at the dealership or whether it's upfront the designer and systems engineering team that wants to look at how to improve maybe the current operation of a vehicle, or just improve the next iteration of that car. So the one from IBM was talking about was, well, what AI can't do yet is explain why it's making decisions, right? And that's going to become very important. I heard this a couple of years ago from the Toyota Research Institute, and they have a couple of, they're working with MIT and Stanford on a couple different scenarios to improve AI within vehicles. And one of the scenarios was, how do you enable the car to explain why? So there's a lot of research going on that front, right? And this gets into the liability issue around AI vehicle, or if there's an accident, who's at fault, right? And so your car better be able to explain why they made the decision to turn that way, or to stop or not stop, depending on what impediment they had in their way. So I think that's going to be an interesting. The AI ball game it's not mature yet. We have a long way to go there, but the opportunities are far-reaching.
When you look at all of this and you look at the alternatives that we have now for the automotive industry, what do you think is next, I guess? Are there a lot of different things that you think we're going in one direction right now that you say, we seem to be on a path that's pretty steady, or do we have some other alternatives? We've got EVs. What do you kind of think's next here in that alternative path, I guess, for automotive?
Yeah, I mean, I just mentioned a couple of points. One is around smart cities, of course, right?
Yeah, we haven't addressed
and that's, maybe that's kind of a mix of what's now and what's next, right? I mean, if you see Ford here, they're talking about their living street, and working closely with municipalities at a state level and federal level, and local level as well, to really find out what to align the technology with how cities plan to grow and build out their cities. Right, there needs to be that collaboration and work together. We can't just throw a bunch of sensors up on city streets and get to level 5 autonomy and expect these cars to work safely. And a lot of that is not a technical issue; it's a societal issue, right? And there are whole you've heard stories about how people react to when they see an autonomous vehicle, right? And or a robot, right? You hear about how people respond when they see robots. One thing Ford was showing over in their booth was their Chariot van that they have, autonomous van. So they have a test right now where they have an actual driver in the vehicle driving around different cities, and there's kind of a cover over the person, so it looks like there's no one driving the car. The cover over the person looks like the seat, right? And they have a camera, and it's basically a research vehicle driving around these cities, stopping at crosswalks and seeing, okay, do people actually look up and try to make eye contact? And if they do, what's their reaction? They're finding a lot of people just, continue to look down at their phones. They don't even notice there's apparently no one driving. Some people stop and look, right? And so I thought that was a good example of, just kind of grassroots approaches to, engendering AI and connected vehicles within communities, right? How do you begin to roll them in slowly? And that's not even getting to the point of discussing what's the infrastructure you need to have in place within a smart city, right? We're just getting to the point, and I'm from Boston, right? And Cambridge is nearby, and they have beautiful bike lanes all throughout Cambridge. And Boston's getting there as well, becoming a much more progressive city. We're not like the cities in Europe, right? We're a little bit behind on that front. So we're just getting to the point now where there are devoted bike lanes, right? So, but what about the autonomous vehicle lanes maybe that need to be in place within cities? So the problem is we only have so much space, right? In a city, how do you mitigate that? Are there only certain devoted routes within cities where autonomous vehicles can drive? Maybe that's a short-term solution. So that's kind of that's one area. The other areas around, I mentioned connected vehicle monetization and what that means, and companies are, as I said, developing, starting to think like retailers, developing retail teams to think about when we get to level 4 and 5 autonomy, what is that experience like for drivers or passengers now within vehicles, and how do they actually want to interact with some of the content? And is there an opportunity there to monetize, whether it's through insurance? Usage-based insurance is already one example that's real now, but what about going into smart cities and having smart parking? That's kind of coming probably very, very soon. But what about having a set of retail partners who could bring content in? So that's another opportunity. So those are really two examples of, I think, maybe what we'll hear over the next couple of years when we come back here at CES, or maybe even before.
Is there anything that was dramatically different from what you saw last year to this year that you said, wow, they've really come a long way? Or is it just a traditional progression from what you saw here at CES?
Yeah, it's in a lot of ways it's a traditional, the progression that I expected to see technically. Still a lot of talk about voice as the new UI, right? Last year Amazon Alexa was
now we got the
everywhere,
big
right?
fight between Google and Amazon,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Now Bixby and whatever's going to happen next.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So everyone's got their voice assistants now that they're trying to embed in vehicles. So that's evolved quite a bit, and I think we'll only as the technology improves, that's really I think probably will be rapidly accepted by the general public. Why wouldn't you want to have a good voice UI within your vehicle to improve your experience? So, but I think one of the things that's new. Again, I'll just mention again. I hadn't heard a lot about smart cities and connected vehicles, or seen a lot of focus on that front. But I believe that's really going to be, as you probably gathered from my comments, a critical component to making autonomous vehicles happen. Most companies in this space, whether you're high tech, whether you're automotive, have stuck pretty firmly to the 2021, 2022 timeframe to say level 4 and level 5 autonomy, level 4 and level 5 on the SAE autonomous maturity curve will be in place, will be available, and there are a whole host of other societal and policy and governmental and other issues that will have to begin to need to approach.
Of the research that you guys do, what have you found in the marketplace are the needs that companies are looking for right now, of what they expect out of companies like this?
Sure. A couple things. One is having a unified technology and open platform that they can have in place to collaborate with their huge ecosystem of partners, right? And so,
makes sense.
Closed applications and enterprise systems have been closed for years, over the past 5 years plus, because of the growth of technologies like that we call third platform technologies like cloud, mobile, big data, and social. Those technologies are enabling companies to really open their platforms up to communicate much more easily with suppliers and other partners that they work with to enable the connected vehicle to become a reality. A couple other areas I think are simulation is certainly important, and the ongoing management and operations of connected vehicles. Right, I think for years, right, you launch the latest car, and then if the car had issues, maybe you heard about it, and maybe at some point it made it back to to engineers to improve the next iteration of the vehicle. Now with the connectivity in place and simulation tools in place, and moving to level 4 and 5 autonomy, it's to enable safety within smart cities and other communities. It's going to be really important to constantly simulate and update the model over time to ensure that that people are moving along safely and wherever they are. So.
Well, Jeff Hojlo,
Yep.
Thank you for being with us. We're out of time. Jeff from IDC, we appreciate that. Well, listeners, you can tweet at us at ConnectedWMag, and any questions you want to ask us or at IDC, we certainly pass those along. And remember, this is the Peggy Smedley Show, the podcasting voice of IoT and relevant technology. And remember, with great technology comes great responsibility. Stick around, we've got more to come right after this.